Hello there, good people. Patricia here. How are you today? Um, yeah, we are continuing our little journey down reflection lane because I said that the last few weeks had been something else. And so it was going to take some time to unpack it all. So this is yet another one of those stories from that time period that had me thinking about the legacies that we are developing even as we go about our day today, not realizing the impact they're going to have way down the line, which causes me to ask the question like, what legacies are you creating today? So, as always, there's a backstory. The backstory is, well, fast forward it and then we'll go work our way backwards, is my daughter graduated with her master's uh, uh, a couple of weeks ago, and my law school roommate and her husband were there, as they have been for her other graduations because she graduated from schools in the same state where they live, and they've just been fantastic friends and basically family all along. But here's the backstory on that. Way back when, 30 plus years ago, I can't even believe I get to say that. 30 plus years ago, when I ended up in California for law school, not knowing a soul where I was going, and being dropped off by the family of family friends. So, not people I knew, but they were the family of family friends that we went to church with back in Texas. And they were kind enough to pick me up from the airport, let me stay at their house overnight. We're talking about connections here, right? And then they dropped me off in Malibu, beautiful Malibu, where I didn't know a soul. And standing there as they are literally pairing us up for those of us that were choosing to live on campus. There was graduate housing, housing for the law students on campus. And while I'm still like looking around, just like in awe of where I was, there was also picking up on the fact of they are literally matching us up with random people as we go along. And I'm like, oh my God, I cannot be matched up with some crazy person. That was just all I could think of. And I was like, oh, this could go bad really fast. So I'm just kind of looking around, and I see this other woman, fair skinned black woman, who was with a black man. So I'm like, one of them has got to be the law student. And I figured out that it was her, and that was her boyfriend at the time. And I just kind of, somehow we just kind of locked eyes. And I walked over to her and I was like, so do you want to be roommates? There's not much more to that story. It literally kind of went down like that. I Sure, there was an introduction of like, "Hey, I'm Patricia," and she introduced herself, and then it was like, "So do you want to be roommates?" Because they were going through that list, and so when our names were called, there we were saying we're going to be roommates. And I was like, I cannot believe I just did that. Like, this could be bad news. So we get all moved in. I just had the suitcases I traveled with. I had nothing. Just the suitcases I traveled with at the time, and we get matched up. And here's the thing: I had never shared a room in my life. I was the oldest. I always had my own room. Like, I had to put up with a lot of other things, but one thing I never had to do was share a room. And I always had my own room. And so here I am, even through college, I never shared a room. And so here I am in law school. about to share a room with a complete stranger. As a matter of fact, they were 2 bedroom, 1 bath apartments. So we were about to have to share with four, it was going to be 4 of us, 4 women sharing 1 bathroom, complete strangers to each other. Y'all, that is a recipe for disaster. And I will say there was a little disastrous moment in the other bedroom where one of the people who was just, God bless her soul, even to this day. And luckily, she got out. We don't know exactly how, but she got out. And the third roommate who remained, we are still friends with to this day because she's a sweetheart. And it all worked out because she was an early bird and early to bed, early to rise. And, my roommate and friend, we we're both night owls, so that worked out. And we had other conflicts. She was being social and off running around with folks, and I'm like, I got to keep my head in these books because I don't like, I gotta make this happen. I gotta make this happen. And as we made it through that first year of law school, we still remained friends after that. We parted ways um for second year, and both moved off campus but with different roommates. And then third year, we came back together. We're roommates with with one other third person off campus. And my third year, I actually came back to Texas for my spring semester because I had an externship. Externship basically means I pay my pseudo employer to allow me to get the experience. I paid tuition. They got, quote, free labor, and I got law school credit for the classes. That's basically how an externship worked. But it was fantastic. It opened the doors for me returning to Texas. And meanwhile, my friendship, we just evolved. And as we stayed in touch, even after I returned to Texas, she and her boyfriend, got married. Uh, I was in the wedding. Uh, I went out after their first child was born. Then my first child was born. I mean, like these things just kept developing, and we shared our lives and our stories, both as professionals and as people, down through the years. They became godparents officially to my second born, and later unofficially to my firstborn, just because she ended up spending more time with them than my boy child. And as we moved along down through the years, it's really hilarious because there were times I spoke to her husband long before I would speak to her. I mean, he would send me messages. We would chit chat. He's a chef. I love to cook, so we exchange our Sunday morning breakfast pictures for years, years. And when our kids were grown and started moving around the country, uh, there I was moving them out there. I'm like, take care of my baby. And they're like, we got her. They were 30 minutes away, but they would they reached out and loved on her. And twice, when she went out for undergrad and then when she returned for grad school. And all the time, saying, hey, when are we going to see, like our boy godchild? Which is like, yeah, that's a thing. We got to work through that. But through many years of ups and downs and all the things, families, sharing family stories, sharing families, having families look out for each other. This was a legacy in the making that I never saw coming, right? Because we were young law students just trying to make it, and as 2 Black women at a predominantly white institution on the West Coast, at the graduate level, professional level, like we were oddities. her story in and of itself is a fascinating one. It's not one for me to tell. I keep saying one day I need to interview my friend because her background and her story is one for the books. And here we still are, right? 30 plus years later, she's got three grown, boys. I've got uh, two almost grown kids, and one grown, one almost. They're all out of the house, technically, technically. Um, and here we are, still sharing um, time and resources, just not in the way that we might have anticipated, right? Down through the years, we've absolutely reached out to each other for advice and counsel when it comes to our professional lives, when it comes to being a lawyer, when it comes to being a Black female lawyer in the spaces that we work. We went different directions. I went into public policy in the legislature, and she went into, law firm and corporate. Couldn't be two different opposite things, and yet here we still are, um, connected, and at this point in time connecting also through our children. um, I helped her oldest with some transition and some coaching when he was trying to enter the workforce in the middle of COVID. Oh my God, that was so crazy. She and her husband, like I said, helped support my oldest when she went out to Cali for undergrad and for graduate school. And knowing that even as we move forward, our lives, our children, all of it are intertwined, right? Um, the kids are friends, you know, people are sending messages to each other, whether we know it or not, like I said. And it's not something I would have anticipated, but I'm absolutely so happy and blessed that it happened. So why am I telling this whole story, right? Well, it's about the fact that there are connections and relationships that you are creating or establishing today. Doesn't matter whether you're a young professional or even one that's, you've been around for 10, 20, maybe even 30 years. There are still relationships that are in the building phase, that are in the creating phase. And some of these relationships are going to go the extra mile. Some of them are going to be with you for years or through tough times or through fantastic, excellent times, but they're going to be with you for the long haul. You don't always know which ones those are. There are some that will be for a long haul and then drop off for whatever reason, right? They will shift, people change, people move. But I just described to you a situation where we moved, I moved back to Texas. We live, halfway across the country from each other, and yet we remain connected through our experiences, eventually through our families, and back through our profession and our experiences again as we are sharing stories and making considerations for what our next steps are in our careers at this point in time in our life, and not just for ourselves, but also for our children. Because guess what? We are role models, we are resources and connection points for each of them. And that is not something, again, that I said, that is not something I necessarily anticipated when I walked up to the complete stranger and asked if she wanted to be roommates. And that's just a reminder to you. Uh, as it was a great reminder to me as we sat down over brunch, after the graduate ceremonies, and there we all were, and I was like, make sure you get pictures with your auntie and uncle because they basically are at this point, and remembering that no matter where you are in your life or what you're doing or what you're going through, there are people, yes, the ones that we kind of expect to be there for the long term, but there are also some relationships and some people who are going to be there for the long term that you just don't see just yet. But you're building that relationship, you're creating it over time, your experiences, your connections, the things you share, the people uh, you work through, all of that comes back and it builds out these legacy relationships that end up expanding beyond the two of you to spouses and children and the connections of the children, all of these things that build this fantastic little web that how webs are so delicate and yet so strong. And oh my goodness, what a great analogy. So delicate and yet so strong because of what has been built over the years. So that's my question to you. What's the web of relationships that you are creating right now that can potentially lead to legacy relationships down through the years? And this is not to say that you go trying to create things on purpose, just trying to say, well, this will be the one, because you really don't know. I'm surprised every day um, these days the relationships that have survived or that have evolved over time, and where they maybe started as professional ones and evolved to personal ones as well, or the flip, right? Either way is true. But what I want to remind you is that the potential is there. So treat your current relationships with respect, treat them, honorably, and if that is reciprocated and that mutual respect remains, know that down through the years, down through time, there may be something that develops that you don't necessarily see. You may actually be at the point of about to really burst into one of those legacy relationships. Be mindful of it, right? As I always say, these connections and things, the relationship, the relational aspect of it is so much more important than the transaction of what you can quote get from someone in at one time. Because the things that I get, my family gets from this long term relationship with my law school roommate and her family, no one could have anticipated that. I could not have anticipated that. But with the respect and the connection that has continued to build over years, there are things that I could ask for or connect with her about or say, hey, let's chat about this with without it feeling transactional, because it's built on trust, it's built on a sincere relationship over time. So sometimes you gotta let that time do its job and recognize where there may be a longer term relationship that you have not been investing in or that you've been taking for granted, that's worth putting a little more time in, and acknowledging what it really brings to the table of your life, not just of your profession. Few years, few experiences, a little bit of wisdom later. I'm telling you, some of those things that you presume early on in your life and your career actually take a shift. And it's actually worth listening to those who've gone on before you for the lessons learned, and the opportunities gained in ways and in things that you never could have anticipated. Okay? So I want you to go explore, think about what legacy relationships you have in place right now. Maybe give them a big hug and a thank you, and or what ones are in development. If you're younger and you're just getting started, recognize that and be sincere in in building out the relationships that you care about and that you want, because guess what, just a handful of those can take you a lot further than a ton of transactional things that have no depth and won't be there for you in the long run. That's what I have to say on that issue. So, what legacy relationships are you creating or have you created and that you need to touch bases with today? That's the question for you today. I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to leave your answers or responses in the comments. And also, please don't forget to hit the like and the thumbs up button and or subscribe to this channel to continue to push this out to others who might enjoy hearing these conversations. All right, so here we are. It is time to celebrate you each and every day, of course, in all the ways. It doesn't matter how big or how small, you are absolutely worth celebrating, because you're doing the things, you're doing the work, you're living the life, and there's power in each and every one of those moments. So be empowered, and we'll talk with you again in the next video. Take care.